My name is Karina. I'm the CEO of Media Mobilize, marketing and advertising agency, where we also work with a ton of creators. I'm also part of the Context Ventures team. I can't believe we're already 5th year of MVS. I remember the first one like it was yesterday. But anyways, yeah, we have a powerful theme, service to storytelling, and we have 2 voices with us who obviously very understand service and storytelling. So if you guys can give a quick intro.
I'll go first. I'm Trevor Smith. I go by Hoover. At least that's my call sign from when I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. So retired after 20 years. And now I run Pilot Debrief. It's essentially a YouTube platform, but it's become an aviation media company that focuses on risk management and safety for pilots.
Awesome. My name is Sam Eckholm. I'm the host of the YouTube show Access Granted. The whole goal is we take people behind the scenes on some of the world's most secretive missions. So fighter jets, aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines. We want to take people up close to extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. I was also in the Air Force. I went to the Air Force Academy. Did not fly. I was a public affairs officer, so my job was to tell the Air Force a story while I was in the Air Force. So I learned a lot from that role. Ended up getting out after my 5-year academy commitment and starting a production company to film the stories that I'd always kind of wanted to tell, right? To reach an even larger audience. People always ask me, why'd you get out? And I always say, I think I'm serving more now than I ever was while I was in, just in a different way and reaching more people. So full-time now, traveling all over the world to tell these stories. And we're based here in San Francisco, actually, too. So we have an office down in Marina, Lombard Street, where we've got a team of about 6 that help me produce and film and edit these things. So it's been a long journey, as you would know on YouTube, from where we started to where we are now. But it's really cool to have a platform out there to reach so many people in an authentic way. And looking forward to being on the panel and chatting.
Awesome. I'm sure when you guys first transitioned out of the service, the content and the creation economy looks very different from what it looks now. How did you guys both get your start into creating content?
Yeah, I grew up with it, right? I mean, I think I'd always wanted to take advantage of social media and telling these stories. It's just, for me, it's either you're on one of 2 sides. You're either a creator or you're a consumer. For a long time, I was a consumer of content. And back when I first started, there was a little bit harder of a barrier to entry to start creating, right? Especially if you wanted to get into long-form YouTube. You had to know a little bit about editing and how to film. Versus now, the landscape has completely changed, where everyone with a phone can basically create content and put something out there. I know for a lot of brands, especially the military, that's kind of scary, because now you have stuff going up all the time and you can't really control it. But for us, it's a little bit different. We focus on really high-impact, high-production quality documentaries. These are 45-minute pieces that really go in depth. And we're looking to target a specific audience with that. We know there's so much content being put out every single day, and our goal is focusing on long forms to really build a community, to go in depth on these stories, and really highlight the soldiers, sailors, Marines, even civilians in the different topics we cover to let their story shine through. So my introduction was in the Air Force. When I was in as a public affairs officer, my first assignment was traveling the world with the F-22 demo team. If you guys aren't familiar, it's similar to the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels, but it's a jet, right? The F-22, the coolest jet out there, by the way. It travels to air shows all over the world. So my job was to run their social media and to tell that story. And even being the premier 5th-generation stealth fighter jet, when I took over that account, they basically had no following at all. So I made it my goal to just figure out unique ways to market that jet, to tell it in an authentic way to people, to really, kind of translate the complex mission that not many people understand in a way that anyone, whether you're an aviation nerd or just a random person off the street, can follow along and enjoy and understand the why. So I did that for 2 years, went to over 60 air shows all around the world. And then when I got out, like all things in the military, those good assignments come to an end. I had a little bit more free time on my hands to start exploring how I was going to continue telling that story. And at the time, this was back in, I think, it would have been like 2019, 2020. YouTube had been around for a while, but the TikToks, the Instagram Reels hadn't really taken off yet. And so it was a good time to get into this world when it wasn't super, super competitive. And so I remember the first video I ever posted, I was lucky enough to get a backseat ride in a T-38, which is the trainer jet that the Air Force uses to train fighter pilots. And I asked if I could film it. I put a couple GoPros up there, had a buddy of mine walk around with a camera, and then I edited that whole piece together. the whole goal was to take people along through the experience and show them what it's like to be a pilot in the Air Force. And it performed extremely well. I think it was just a mix of cool access with good storytelling, that people could feel themselves like they're with me. And it was kind of like a light bulb moment in my head where I was like, I think I'm onto something here. I think I've got a format and a style that could work and resonate with people. So flash forward, people always ask, how do you get the access you do? Well, I say, if you're good at telling a story, everyone wants their story to be told, whether you're a brand, a company, or the world's largest company, which is the Department of Defense War. It's been a snowball effect ever since that first video, and we're lucky to have the trust from all these military units and organizations to have our team come in and showcase them in an authentic way that people can resonate with. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. That was a little bit of a long answer, but thank you.
For me, I never saw myself as a content creator or even becoming a content creator when I was in the Air Force. You know, like every good fighter pilot, all you want to do is be a fighter pilot. And I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my career. And then at 20 years, I retired. And you know, what do? Well, you go transition to fly for the airlines like most pilots do. The only challenge was at that time, this was in January of 2020, so the airlines stopped hiring 2 months later. And out of necessity, it's like, all right, I need to do something to create some income. I ended up going and getting my mortgage license and real estate license. And because I couldn't actually go out and meet with people in public, I needed to find a way to connect with the audience and actually sell. And so I started creating real estate mortgage content for YouTube and really learned short form content, long form content, and did that for about 2 years before eventually the airlines were hiring again. And around that time, I said, hey, I really don't like making content about mortgages and the housing market. It's not really my bread and butter. It's not what I'm passionate about. And because I have a background in aviation safety from my time in the military, I said, let me do this instead, and let's see how it goes. Because I knew what you needed to do to be successful in terms of content creation on different platforms. And the aviation content that was out there for the stuff I wanted to produce, I knew I could tell the story better. At least I felt I could tell the story better. And that's how my channel launched. It's Pilot Debrief. So the focus of my channel is really, I take aviation mishaps from the general aviation community, so not military specific, and break them down from a human factors side of storytelling, explain what happened. But the other part of your question about how things have changed over time, so I got started doing that really around COVID with the real estate piece, and just seeing the trajectory and the growth of the YouTube and platform as well as the other social media platforms, it's just been really amazing to see and the different tools that they've made available for creators and the speed at which someone can start from zero and become, you know, I guess a novelty, you know, really in the creator storytelling space.
I'm curious about when you both thought, oh, this isn't just a project, this is a platform. You guys both have videos that have reached views 8 to 12 million views. And, you know, was there a specific video or moment when you realized the influence that you could have over people?
I think I knew from the aviation channel perspective, one of the very first videos that I did was on the Wings Over Dallas Air Show mid-air collision. And that video took off right away. Probably like you experienced some success in one of your early videos. And from right then, I knew like, okay, this is going to be something real for me going forward. And at that point, I still didn't fully understand what the audience was going to be or what it was going to look like. But I knew that I had a mechanism that I could go out there and execute from a storytelling perspective to create the content that I wanted to create and, you know, get that message out to the viewer. And so where I'm at now is not where I thought I was going to be. It's actually well beyond where I thought it was going to be, but it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because a lot of the times the metric that people use to gauge success for a creator or channel is views, right? How many views do you have or how many subscribers do you have? And there's certain videos and topics that we all know we can make that will probably hit the most amount of views, but that's not always the stories or the videos you probably want to make, right? And our team and any creator struggles with that, right? You've got your kind of tier 1 video. If you keep pumping those out, they're going to do really well. But you also have to worry about, hey, what does our team want to tell? What are the stories we want to tell? And our team realized that really early on. There's videos we want to make, but we know the audience potential and the viewership is going to be a lot lower. Maybe it's super niche, or it's on some mission that's exciting to me, but I know it's not going to be exciting to that many people. So the way I kind of answer that question is, our goal now is to be able to mix it up, where we just don't have to be a complete, reliant on the YouTube algorithm to tell us what videos we want to make and what stories we want to tell. But it's tough, because we're a business just like anyone else, right? Like, we have employees, I know you do as well. You have to hit certain marks in revenue and stuff like that to be able to continue this. So for me, it's finding a way to tell the stories that I want to make, also the ones that viewers want to make, and also the ones that help us keep the lights on as well. And that's kind of been the biggest struggle as a creator, I would say. But the more you do it, and I'm curious your take as well, like how you decide what projects you take on, the more experience you have to know what is going to perform well, and trying to find a good blend is, like, I think, the goal for every creator out there.
So I think the biggest thing is you always have to optimize for the human and for the audience, not optimizing for the algorithm. Because when you can satisfy the viewer's needs and when you can connect with them on their level and give them the content that they're craving, or that you can predict what video they would want to watch next, like you're beating that algorithm, but you're not optimizing for the algorithm. If that makes sense.
How do you maintain credibility in a world where we often reward speed over accuracy? Every time there's, you touch on a lot of like accidents and mishaps. How do you make sure that you are reporting in a timely manner, but also being accurate and staying true to the facts?
This is a real problem in the aviation mishap industry on social media, because there's almost like this race to be the first to create a video whenever there's a major tragedy. And it's one of the reasons why I typically don't cover breaking news mishaps. It's because it's too easy to speculate on the reasons why, and then you end up being wrong, and then it just ruins that credibility and trust with the audience. And so I'm very selective when I do it, and when I do cover those breaking news tragedies, I put a lot of effort into ensuring that everything that I say to the audience is going to be something that I'm not going to regret later on. If it's something that I didn't foresee happening when the investigation comes out after the fact. I have seen other content creators in the space, it's bitten them because they put stuff out there and it turns out to be completely wrong, and it's ruined their credibility. And that's why I tend to focus more on the mishaps that have a complete full NTSB investigation, because as most people don't realize, there's anywhere from several hundred to several thousand pages that go into an investigation depending on how complex it is. And I'm able to take that and break it down from the human factors side. And so now, within my video, I can go back to every single thing that I say is based on fact. And I think that helps with the trust and credibility.
Well, I would say going to the credibility, trust is really hard to earn, but easily lost. And so, especially when you're an online figure, right? And so, what do you think veterans especially understand about building credibility with their audience?
Yeah, well, I'll go back real quick to your earlier question. I heard a stat the other day that blew my mind. Every single day on YouTube, I'm not sure if you know this, there's 20 million videos uploaded. Every single day, 20 million, which is like mind-blowing. And it's intimidating too, right? So the biggest thing when new people come up to me and ask, I'm interested in making content, putting myself out there, I'm intimidated by how saturated the market is, what advice do you have for me? That's something I worried about too when I first uploaded. It's how do you stand out amid all that noise? There's always temptations you have, especially as a creator, to follow certain trends, to change your style, to keep up with what everyone else is doing. I love what you mentioned about not jumping on those new trend or new breaking news stories as well, because you're thinking about credibility, right? And I think a lot of the channels out there and creators out there who have a short runway, who might have relevancy for a couple months or a year, they're the ones that are chasing these trends and trying to stay hot. If you can always be thinking about, hey, how do I stay relevant and credible for years to come? I think that's the most important thing as a creator that you can do. So that's something our team is always thinking about. We get tempted. We see different topics or new styles or new things we might want to try that are trendy. might go viral real quick. But the thing that's kept us going for the last 6 years has been staying true to our style. We're pretty unique. Like I said, we're pretty long form videos, 30, 45 minutes, highly produced, quality content. Quality over quantity is a big thing for us. And that helps stand out amongst all the noise where retention is going down so much, where everyone is constantly swiping and scrolling and clicking on things. You always hear, you gotta hook the viewer's attention immediately. Well, if you can kind of stand out and be unique, that has really helped. And I'm just a firm believer that no matter what, I think what's gonna stay in style, be the trend for years to come, is quality, authentic storytelling, and not chasing some fast trend. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Going back to credibility, what do you guys think about sponsors? I work with a lot of creators on the media mobilize side, and I do have creators that they just want a sponsor for each video. That's totally fine, but I'm curious what you guys think.
I started taking on sponsors probably about a year ago, and it's been interesting. I've been very selective with doing so because I want to make sure any sponsor that I work with, it's got to be something that I know is going to resonate with my audience, where it's not going to break that trust that I've built with them, because now I'm inserting that into my video, and it's not something they can just click the skip button, although I think YouTube has now rolled out a feature where they can do that. I think it's fine. There's a balance, and you've got to adjust based on your audience, and be very careful.
Yeah, I don't know the audience here too well, so excuse me if I'm, educating you on something you already know. But to be clear, so on YouTube, there's pretty much two primary ways creators make money. There's from the platform itself that will pay you based on viewership, and then there's from taking third-party external sponsors, which you probably all seen brand deals or mid-roll integrations in the middle of videos. Similar to a TV commercial. A lot of people assume, I'm sure you get this too, that the platform pays you a ton of money. YouTube probably pays the most, but it's all based off viewership. So if you're getting 1 million views on a video, which is a lot, right? I mean, not too many channels are pulling in 1 million views per video. I don't know what your rate is. I mean, mine might be $3,000 or $4,000, right? It's not much. It's a nice to have. We don't factor that into any of our revenue models for the year. So the real way you're able to make money is taking on sponsorships. When I first started, especially creating content around the military and government, that was a huge issue, because you can't be seen as endorsing, from the government, right? You have to be very clear with what you do. And so I worked for a long time to make sure we were doing it right. Unfortunately, there were a lot of other creators and platforms out there that were doing it wrong. From even like posting in uniform, use my code to buy this protein powder, something like that. Obviously, you can't do that. So that was always a unique channel or a unique challenge for our teams. How do you actually be profitable and make money? So now for us, sponsorships are incredibly important, right? That is how we make content, and I don't think enough people understand that, especially for this audience. That's something I'd love to leave you with. If you have companies and you're never working with creators rely on that to be able to make videos. If there are no sponsors, there are no videos. So it's that constant trade-off. We don't want to necessarily take them on if they're not perfectly aligned to, because we don't want to make it a worse viewing experience. So we're always trying to find the best aligned partner, right? Something that goes along with the story, a product we both use, something that the viewers can actually find value from as well. So to answer your question, I have nothing wrong with sponsors. We need sponsors. Sponsors allow us to do what we do, and we're always trying to find ones that are the best fit and let us kind of do what we want to do, right? Not just tell us to read a script for 30 seconds and then move on. If we can tie it organically into the story itself, that's always the best way to do it.
Sam, going to your content specifically, tons of views, obviously, you're really resonating with your audience, and you allow viewers to see real behind the scenes, military content that typically the general public can't see. With that, are you hoping to inspire future generations to join the Air Force, or what's the intent behind the content?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of 3 different things, right? It's definitely inspiring the next generation to serve. It's also inspiring people currently serving, right? Retention too, giving them something proud to show their friends and family that, here, look what I do in the military. And then two, it's the general public, right? It's people who have no idea what their taxpayer dollars are going to, and being able to watch a video and explain and see what that's like. That's been huge for us. We branched out now to more than just covering military stories. In fact, one of our recent episodes, I encourage all of you to watch, we did a video on the cargo ships that come in and out of the San Francisco Bay, and how the bar pilots, who are expert mariners, navigate them in and out of really one of the world's most treacherous bays and how that works. So we're excited to continue telling more stories in other industries as well. But at its core, at the root, I mean, as an Air Force veteran myself, I remember when I was 18 years old, I was looking at going to the academy and looking at my options, and there just wasn't anything out there that accurately, authentically, and in an exciting way showed off what the military is all about. So I knew that I wanted to one day create that content for other people out there, and hopefully we've been able to do that.
Awesome. Hoover, going into your content, you often cover aviation accidents and incidents, and often it does include human loss. How do you go about creating your content with the accuracy, but also kind of human respect? And then has there ever been a time when you were pursuing a video and you decided not to complete it?
That's a great question. And so first and foremost, everything for me goes back to the fighter pilot debrief methodology and like the hundreds, if not thousands, of debriefs I sat through throughout my 20-year career as a fighter pilot. Where rank is left at the door, and there's no ego in the room, and really like what you're trying to get at is not belittling or tearing down the person, but talking about the mistakes they made and the ways that they can improve next time, so that way we can all be better from this. And so when I started making this content, I approached it with that same philosophy. If I was sitting in a room with the victim's family, would they be comfortable with what I'm saying? And maybe not, but I think if I look at each of these mishaps, if I had the opportunity to intervene and debrief that pilot, or sit down and talk with them before the mishap to say, here's what you're doing wrong, and here's how you can do it better, maybe this mishap never would happen, right? And so that's the approach I want to take. I never want to find myself making a video where I know the family's going to be extremely upset with something that I said because it mischaracterized that individual or that sort of thing. And to the second half of your question, there was a story that I just made a video on just recently where when the event happened, I knew it was going to be a very compelling story because through a FOIA request I got the ATC audio, the air traffic control, where the controller's talking with the pilot, and it's a young kid, I think he was like 23 years old. And normally in a situation where you're flying by yourself and you don't have the right qualifications to fly in the weather, if you inadvertently go in the weather, on average, you're dead in about 178 seconds if you don't recover from that situation. And in his situation, he lasted for about 30 minutes. And it's the controller trying to constantly talk him through and save him from this scenario. And so when I knew it happened, I got the audio, and I knew what a compelling story it was and how we can use this to prevent future tragedies. And I almost made a video on it, and I ended up waiting about 1.5 years to do so because I just felt it wasn't the right thing to do. Because even though I knew what the outcome was and I knew all the facts, I wanted to wait to be able to have the actual NTSB investigation, so that way, it was more authentic to the type of content that I create, and I could actually cite that, even though I already knew what the report was going to say.
Have you ever had, both of you, to publicly adjust anything that you've said or video you've put out there? And I ask this because recently I was speaking with a creator that I know, and there was a little bit of like a rumbling, and it could have led to some negative feedback. And this person was like, I'm not sure if I should just publicly make a video about it and address it head on, or am I adding fuel to the fire? So thoughts on that?
I mean, we're so careful because that's my biggest fear. But it's funny because when you have an audience that's online, everyone just assumes certain things and schemes, and you have no idea what they're saying out there. So a funny example, we were making a video out at Minot Air Force Base on the ICBM, so intercontinental ballistic missiles, right? We got incredible access to go inside an actual missile silo, missile alert facility, and tell the story of the missileers. So we filmed that video. I mean, it took us like 3 months to edit. We're so excited to put it out there. I did a big trailer and hype release for this video too. Got a lot of eyes on it, right? So it goes out. It performs extremely well. It's like one of our highest performing videos within the first couple of hours. And all of a sudden I start seeing some comments come in that there was like an audio issue. Basically YouTube had rolled out a new feature where if you had some setting toggled, it would like mute the audio to a low level that basically made it unwatchable. So our team made the decision to pull the video down so we could fix that because it was something we were able to do and put it back up there. And the second I pulled it down, it was like basically that nuclear explosion went off because people thought that we had like exposed government secrets and were told by the Department of Defense to take the video down, and I was getting emails from everyone. I mean, even people, oh my God, it was crazy. It's like on Reddit, the threads were like, Sam unveils like world's nuclear codes. It was insane. It was literally just an audio issue. So we post the video back up. I pin a comment saying, hey guys, sorry about that. We had an audio issue. And that sounds like the worst excuse ever, right? Like, we had an audio issue. And so people were going frame by frame comparing the old video to the new video to see if we like removed a clip. But no, it was literally an audio issue. But my point is, I'm so scared of the people out there thinking you know, what they could say about what's going on. So you definitely have to be pretty cognizant of that.
I've definitely made some mistakes, and my biggest advice to creators is just own up to them. You know, what I've done is, and my audience has grown to appreciate, is I essentially will debrief myself. And so if I get called out for a mistake, I'll put it as my pinned comment, you know, and say like, hey, I need to debrief myself. Here's a mistake that I made in the last video, or you know, here's why I was wrong, that sort of thing. It doesn't happen too often anymore because I've learned to be more careful. But it happened early on, you know, as a content creator, especially as somebody who has a background in military aviation. I didn't have that background knowledge from being a general aviation pilot and how they do things differently sometimes compared to how military pilots do things. And so in my early days, like sometimes I would say something just because of an assumption that I had from my experience as a military pilot, but it wouldn't necessarily translate to the general aviation community. But the biggest thing is just being honest about your mistakes and stepping up. And I've only had to take down one video so far. So.
What do you guys do when you hit a roadblock in terms of maybe you run out of ideas for videos, or you feel like you're at a standstill and you have to pivot? I know Hoover, you mentioned you used to make videos on real estate, and so how do you overcome these roadblocks?
Here's your answer.
Well, so my roadblock with real estate and housing content was like, I just hated doing it. I mean, you know, like if you're a content creator, if you're not making content that you're passionate about, you're gonna hit that point where you want to stop. And, you know, so if you want to get into content creation and storytelling, it's really gotta be something that's in your heart, because otherwise, you know, all the obstacles you're encountering along the way are just gonna make you want to quit. For where I'm at now, though, like having made aviation content for going on 4 years now, it is a challenge to find new ideas because it's like, haven't I told the same story about the same mistake, you know, so many times? But the reality is like, there's always a new audience watching, like new people coming into the ecosystem. You know, people age up or age out, you know, from your platform, that sort of thing. And you're always trying to find like new angles. So it's a challenge at times, but I think it's something that every creator struggles with.
Yeah, the biggest roadblock for us, especially early on, was just the access, right? To be able to tell these stories. And it was understandable at first, you know, we're trying to prove who we are, but a little bit frustrating as time went by. Even with an audience of millions, it would be so hard to convince the military, whatever organization, to let us tell these stories. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here, you know, seeing all the traditional or legacy media, getting all the access to do everything. Even if our stuff and our videos were reaching 10 times the amount of people, you know, we always hear now, hey, not many people are turning on the 6 o'clock news to watch anything anymore. Even, you know, shows like The Tonight Show, right? They're actually clipping their show to put on YouTube because they know that's where the audience is. So I spent a lot of time networking and advocating for what we were building. If you're a unit out there, an organization, and you're giving all of this time and energy access to a media outlet to come and tell your story, wouldn't you want the biggest ROI on that? Wouldn't you want the biggest viewership, the largest viewership? and even if not the largest viewership, just your story told authentically in a correct way. So I remember giving a brief to some senior level people within public affairs and kind of just showing some of the stories from the news outlets who had gotten the same access we were looking to get, but they did like a 90-second clip on the nightly news that from our analytics showed reached less than like 20,000 people, and it was like a 90-second little clip, right? Versus what we were trying to create was a 30-minute in-depth piece. And our previous video on something similar had reached 3 million people with actual authentic engagements and comments and things that you could look and track. I think that's one of my proudest achievements now, is being able to have a reputation to where people can say, hey, look at what Sam and his team and his show, look how many people they've been able to reach. It's helped other creators as well be able to get access and tell stories too. And I think helped change the landscape a little bit to be like, hey, yes, we're not CNN or Fox News or Business Insider, but we've got a pretty powerful audience as well. So, pay attention to us over here.
Shifting to a more veteran focus, is there a community for veteran content creators? Do you know?
I don't feel like there is. I mean, I feel like a lot of content creators kind of operate in their stovepipes. There are some communities that are out there, but I feel isolated at times. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a specific veteran. I mean, I think if you're making heavily veteran content, there might be. What I mean by that is like specific military how-to instructional videos. If that's everything you do, there might be, but I guess I'm not really aware of it. Where I found the veteran community really helpful is just like in our audience, right? Especially when I go and film a video and I'm on base and you see all these young airmen or soldiers or Marines come up to you and tell you how much your video has impacted them. That's really cool. Goes back to your earlier question about our audience and who we're reaching. Even though we're branching out to tell more stories across other industries, that core is still the military with me, and I always want to be able to tell that story effectively. So, but yeah, I guess there isn't a specific one. That would be cool though. Maybe we should jump on that.
What advice do you have for veterans who feel like their experience in the military doesn't necessarily translate to quote-unquote civilian industries?
I don't know. That's a tough question. If you look at like my career path, right? Like this was not the career path I ever thought I would be on. In terms of like where I'm at now as a storyteller, content creator, who's now trying to take that and transform that into a viable business model off of YouTube. I've got an audience of 900,000 people. I'm like, how do I take that to grow my business? That's not a problem I envisioned having, while I was in the service. And I definitely didn't feel like I had the skills to do that at the time getting out of the service. But like most service members, you're adaptable, right? Like you learn and you're very resilient. And I think that's the biggest thing is like if you have something that you want to pursue or something that you want to do, it's just like any other business industry. Just go out there and learn it. Like you're gonna take some hits along the way, but like for me with the real estate content, that was the biggest lesson. Was like I'm not passionate about this, so this is not something I'm going to keep doing. So find something I am passionate about and make that a success.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question, but from what I've seen and heard, and even with my own team hiring, it's not always the specific skills that you have and the experience, it's the type of individual that you are. And I think, especially for military members, all the networking, getting out there, and introducing yourself to new people, and like you said, all the skills we have from being veterans is very lucrative to a lot of companies. I think people get hung up on, my job in the military isn't translated to anything in the civilian world. But that's okay. I think the qualities and characteristics you learn in the military is what companies are looking for that will help you stand out. And just putting themselves out there in front of people, I think is the most valuable thing you can do.
Yeah, I was, every time I come to the conference, I meet a ton of founders, and every year the conversation around marketing and how to get their brand and company out there changes. And in this era of social media that we're working in, I had one founder, like maybe an hour ago, I was talking to him, and he's like, should I start a Substack? Should I start a TikTok? And I was like, you totally can if you want. I think, like you had mentioned, people used to get their news a lot from like CNN, Fox News, etc. And now YouTube and like the content that you guys have been producing reaches so many eyeballs. So I think it's just so important to be aware of the influence and power of social media. So going in.
I don't know if we're doing questions. I see some hands, but do you want to wait till the end?
We can take some questions.
Yeah, just don't want to ignore you guys.
Karina, Josh Brooks, Exponential Advisors. I'm a short form video content creator, aspiring rap artist, and you got it. So you brought up a really good point about communities, right, for content creators. So Karina, if you had an idea, where would that space be? What would it look like? How would veterans mobilize, to use media mobilize? What would that look like?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you need to do is network. There are so many creator and content events and conferences out there. We actually just had one last year called C3, and Sam, you were there, thank you so much. And it's just about networking, and people who are attending these events typically attend because they are open to networking and meeting. There are a lot of creators who are, and as they should be, focused, and they stay home, they're doing their work, and so they might not have time to network. But if you're actively attending events, I feel like you are opening that door. And then as far as a veteran-specific community, I think we need to have Hoover and Sam start one, right?
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood the original question, but yeah, there's absolutely events. I mean, my gosh, the one we did last year, I went to a military influencer conference this year, which is in Atlanta, which was, they used the word influencer a little differently, not just to mean content creators, but basically anyone in any industry who's making an impact and is serving some sort of role that others can kind of, follow along with. And then I just saw they're doing like a military creators conference this year too. So I'd look into some of those and put yourself out there, because I guarantee you the people that you want to be involved in some sort of official organization are going to that as well. So there are some good events and organizations out there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So there's a military influencer conference now.
Yeah, it's called MIC.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to look out for your rap album that comes out. We have a question up here?
Yes, so really curious with AI coming out, right? It's so easy now for people to replicate content. As a fellow content creator, I more on the education side of my ed tech business, aviation smart. But anyways, how do you guys fight back against AI potentially replicating your content or copycats, things like this?
So I'll start with this because there's a group in China that's ripping off all my content. And they have a faceless channel where it's basically they're copying essentially what I'm doing as well as some other aviation content creators. So you can tell it's all AI powered. And actually in the early stages of their channel, they showed a video that was like behind the scenes, and so you could see the team, and that's how I knew it was from China. They kind of had like subtitles explaining who they were and everything. They've since taken that video down, so now nobody knows who they are. But the problem where I don't really try to fight it, because what I see happening is when you have AI generated content, you're lacking that human connection. And so when you don't have that human connection, like, you don't grow. The audience wants the human connection, no matter what platform you're on. They want to see a face, or they want to feel like it's a real person talking to them, not something being generated by AI. So I'm able to use AI to help me support my research and make my content production easier. But in terms of the actual storytelling, that's the human element that I think AI can't replicate. And so that's why these channels that are ripping me off, like, they don't get anywhere near the number of views or followership that other aviation content channels get.
Yeah, it's scary. I do think, so when you say faceless channels, for people who don't know what that means, I mean, it's in the word itself, but there's a lot of channels out there. It's just voiceover and B-roll footage, right? Clips. There's no actual in-person human element to it. And some of those channels are incredibly successful. And I have a friend who does that channel, and he's an actual person talking and researches the clips, and he's getting destroyed by AI because people are just pumping out literally hundreds of videos a day on any topic. I mean, imagine if you just AI the script, you AI the voice, and basically you AI the clips. It's check, check, check. How do you compete with that? You really don't. You hope viewers know that, but I mean, people's attention spans these days, that stuff's interesting to some people. I think our team, I might be naive saying this, I think we're safe for the time being because we are actually going out and filming stories that can't be AI replicated in their current format. But where we're really seeing the hit is just on the viewership now is getting scattered in so many different places. If you only have so many minutes of content being watched a day, and now you have 100x the amount of videos getting uploaded, every creator takes a hit on the viewership because there's only so much to go out there. So while I think we're safe for the time being, and we're always thinking about it, and we're always innovating, we're trying to figure out what the next AI thing's gonna be, for now, I think it is very scary to just think about what the future's gonna be in terms of just the viewership and how much is getting put out there.
I see some more questions. We'll come back to them at the end, I promise. Let's talk about some trade secrets. So I know a lot of, it's not anything related to us. I know we have a lot of
Is
people.
that trade secrets? Oh, okay.
I know a lot of people want to start producing content in this room. Based on the success of certain videos, what have you both learned when it comes to getting that engagement? It could be flashy thumbnails, it could be, you know, your caption, certain color font. What works best? I heard red font works. I don't know if that's true.
So first of all, you gotta always have to focus on the viewer, would be my number one thing. Like if you're not starting with the viewer, then your content's never gonna resonate, right? So if you're seeing content out there that's like somebody's using this type of font or this type of thumbnail style or this type of title, like that might work for their audience, it may not work for the audience that you want to reach, right? So you really have to understand who your viewer is and then create the content that satisfies that viewer needs. And that starts with the curiosity that drives the click. So how can you think about this individual that's going to be consuming your content? How are you going to make them curious enough to want to click on it, to watch it? Because you have to assume that everybody seeing you for the first time has no idea who you are. They don't know your background. They don't know what size channel you have, because it's not like they get all these stats, right? As they're scrolling through their feed and they see these things. And then you've got to deliver on that click. And I know you do this really well, and it's a focus of mine too, is really when somebody clicks on that video within the first 10 seconds, if they're not seeing something that matches something similar to the thumbnail, or they're not seeing you deliver on the promise of the title of the video within that first few seconds, then you've already lost that trust, right? Because now you're seen as potentially clickbait, and then that's really what I think is the most important thing, is just focusing on the viewer and making that connection really within that first 10 seconds. And it's different when it comes to short form as opposed to long form video, because as you find out, short form content, whether it's Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok, people are just swiping through, right? So they don't see a thumbnail, they don't see a title. So the way you deliver that content is very different than how you style your content for a long form video, but it's still intended to reach the same viewing audience. So your avatar or your notional customer that you're trying to connect with, it's the same message that you're trying to send. The way you deliver it is just packaged differently.
Yeah, I say all the time, if they don't click, they don't watch. And I guess it applies to short form too. If they don't stop, they don't watch. So that's something we're always thinking about. There's so many nuances and things you can talk about, and it can get incredibly overwhelming thinking about all the retention strategies and titles, thumbnails, font. There's some value there, and I think at a surface level, any successful creator is pretty good at understanding those rules, but it's a lot of noise as well. So the biggest advice I have for anyone out here who's running a brand, a company, trying to create content, trying to get it to be seen, is just be a big consumer, an avid consumer of content. One of the best things I ever did is I've got a little folder on my phone on all the social media platforms, so when I see something that I like, that is well done, that is getting good viewership, that I feel like I can emulate, I'll just save it in a folder. Then you can come back to that and see those strategies that are working. If you see something with a ton of views, something's working, right? Sure, maybe it's a sensational topic, and that's the reason why, but if you're like, that was a really niche topic and it did super well, analyze it from start to finish. Figure out what they are doing. What was the hook? What were the retention strategies? What were the titles, thumbnails, colors? Maybe that goes in there too. That's the best way to figure out what works, is look at other people for inspiration and see what's working for them.
For someone who wants to start making content now and they have no team, I know you guys have a team, what are the top 3 to 5 things, tools, camera, editing tools or anything. Be as specific, share all your secrets. For, you know, for whoever can't afford like a huge
No,
production.
this is
budget.
easy. Like when I started, I mean, it was literally like an iPhone and, you know, like a desktop microphone. And I was sitting in my, you know, living room with the camera there, either the iPhone mounted or sometimes I shot with like a webcam, like a high definition webcam. And like, I'm just like my platform is really just a talking head video, if you're not familiar, so I'm just kind of sitting behind the desk and talking to the camera, explaining things, which is going to be very different than your style of content. So for me to get started, it's very simple and easy. And from an editing perspective, like I learned how to do that on my own with, you know, just using, I think it was called Camtasia or something. It's what I started using. And it's really like software design for like school teachers and that sort of thing. But it's very basic stuff. And I've since moved on. But the biggest thing from a content creation perspective is like, you have to learn how to do all that yourself before you start outsourcing that, because otherwise you don't know what's good and what's bad along the way. So, but you can start, you know, even the simplest of tools. And I'm sure even for like filming outside, like I know some good outdoor channels that are out there that all they film with is an iPhone, like, and that's it. You know, because why it works is it's the storytelling. Like the viewer doesn't care what camera you film with or how high quality your audio is if you have a crappy story, you know, or I mean if you have a good story. So if you have a great story, like they're gonna watch and they're gonna, you know, work their way through like some audio issues and, you know, like maybe this isn't shot in 4K and that's fine. And then you eventually get to that point where as a content creator, you're like, okay, now I know how to make that video better, because your goal should be every video, you know, you want to strive to make it better than the last.
Yeah, very little to add, extremely well said. I will just say what's happening now, because of AI, actually, I think, so many videos are so well produced and so high quality that it's the imperfections, the little bit of less quality stuff that's really starting to stand out. You see that on short form a lot of the times. Like TikTok, to me, the videos on TikTok that do super well are the ones that feel like you're FaceTiming a friend, right? You really feel like you are right there with the person covering it. And so for our team, we'll put away our big, fancy, expensive cameras, and when we're filming a short form on TikTok, we pull out the iPhone strategically so we have that more rough, raw, cut-looking video. So if you're out there and you're intimidated by cameras, this is the best time, because I think videos that now are a little bit more amateur are doing well and standing out with everything that's so well done and high produced.
Yeah, and I hated how I sounded on video when I first started doing it, but I got over it quickly. Because that's the other big thing is like, most people, when you're going back and you're editing your content, you're like, I hate how I sound or how I look.
Yeah.
And you just get over it because that's how everybody sees you anyway.
Yeah, and I will say, I do agree, video quality really doesn't matter a ton. I mean, any iPhone now is incredibly capable. I will say there is a barrier for audio that if it's bad, people will just scroll. So you gotta have like a decent microphone. I would focus more on the audio than the camera as long as you have an iPhone.
What do you guys think about timeline as far as posting? Because we have founders who probably want to start churning out content, but they don't want to lose, you know, the audience interest. What I've heard throughout the years is that consistency is key, but then Sam, you also mentioned quality over quantity, right?
Yeah, I used to answer that and always say quality over quantity. I'm not sure that's the right answer anymore, to be truthfully. With so many companies and brands spamming content, especially on short form, I'm kind of leaning now towards, if you're primarily a short form creator, I actually think quantity is more important. People are just filming their entire lives and they have someone on their team that just cuts it up and clips it, and it does super well. I mean, live streamers are taking over right now, where they're literally streaming the entire day, every second of their life. And so there is an element now to having to put a lot of content out there. You consider yourself a long form creator, I assume, right? So I think we're both unique in that. Do you use shorts as well, or you? Yeah, curious.
So shorts was a big part of my strategy in the early days of how I grew my channel. I don't do shorts as much anymore for several different reasons.
Okay.
But my biggest thing would be just consistency, right? Like, so pick your platform and be consistent on that platform. You're never going to be consistent on all platforms in the same way, if that makes sense. Because like TikTok, you know, you can put out 3 videos a day, YouTube, you can't really do 3 long-form videos a day, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to understand what platform you're going after, and then just be consistent with it to whatever schedule you can support. And then at some point, like, the audience will tolerate you taking a break, you know? But like for the first 3 years of making aviation videos, I didn't skip a single week. Like, so I made a video every single week of long form, and for the first year or so, I was doing, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 shorts a month on top of that. And eventually I got to the point where, like, it's okay for me to skip a Sunday, you know, posting a video. And surprisingly, the audience tolerated it. I was like, wow, that felt good. Like, I could actually take a break from doing work. And so I think that's the other issue with creators is, like, you don't want to burn yourself out trying to be consistent. Right? So.
Yeah, so basically to finish my thought, I think short form, there's no issue posting as much as you want. Long form is just harder to do, and I still think quality over quantity makes sense there. But short form, go at it. Our team looks at that, like, we can put anything out there and it doesn't really matter. If a video doesn't perform, so be it. It gets lost the next day. There's really not a long-term search feature. I mean, there kind of is now rolling out, but usually those are only relevant for a day or two. Versus long form, I have videos posted 3 years ago that are still doing a couple 100,000 views a month, which is pretty crazy. So I look at that as like our portfolio, like my work that I'm really proud of, that I want to speak and be relevant for years to come, versus short form you can explore a little bit more.
If we were to have the same exact panel in 5 years, and I asked you guys questions on what you've accomplished and what you've built, what are you guys hoping to say in the next 5 years? It could be potential collaborations or shifts in your content.
I want to become the #1 aviation safety brand, at least in the U.S., if not globally, by essentially building tools and resources to educate pilots to help them stay safe, and have at some point my own event or my own air show, where that's a big part of it is the safety focus. So hopefully.
See, that's a great answer. Mine is basically just to still be standing here doing this, I'd say. It's a lot. We're traveling all over the world. It's grueling, to be honest. So just to still be motivated to tell these stories and excited about the content, that's my goal. I just want to keep being excited. And I am. I don't think that's ever going to change, but it's definitely a lot. And hopefully this panel kind of opened your eyes to all the work that goes on behind the scenes to do what we do. And I don't say that to brag or, you know, ask for any empathy. I say that because a lot of the times when we're trying to work with brands or explain what we do or get access to certain things, people don't know how much work and effort it takes. And just like the value you're hopefully getting from our videos, we're trying to get value with it as well, because we've got teams and businesses too. So that's why I love doing panels like this, to just explain how we operate and how we work and how much it means to us. And yeah, hopefully I'm still here.
Last question before I open up the floor for audience questions. Do you think that anyone can be a creator? And when I say creator, I mean like a successful creator, because, you know, obviously you need to have grit. In the beginning, when your reputation wasn't as big, you didn't get access to all these places, so you had to keep persevering. And then Hoover, you know, you obviously have to do a lot of due diligence, a lot of research, and so a lot of effort goes into it. So do you think anybody can just start filming and be successful?
Yeah, I mean, of course, anyone could be a creator. That's, to me, that's an easy answer. I think the hard thing is being the creator you want to be. I often heard that the worst thing that can happen to a creator is having their first video go viral, right? Because then they are used to a standard that's not always replicable, or maybe that topic was on something that they're not actually interested in. So be a little bit calculated in what you're making, because if you're going to last, and maybe that's not your goal, maybe you don't think 5 years down the road, but you really need to be passionate about what you're making, as I'm sure you are, Hoover, because like you said, you're making a lot of similar videos, you're trying to think of new ideas. You wouldn't be here if you weren't passionate for this, and I think a lot of people burn out because of that.
I think anybody can be a creator. It's just, you know, is that what you want to be though, right? Like for me, when I started creating real estate content, you know, I didn't like real estate content, but as I started making it, like I knew I wanted to be a good storyteller. And so I knew I wanted to keep doing content creation. It just took me a while to realize like I should just follow what I'm passionate about and make that type of content along the way. So I think that's the big thing as a content creator is, you know, you need to be able to, you know, ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? What's my motive behind it? And if you're just making content in the hopes that you're going to make some money off of it, then you're probably going to get burned out and not be successful. Like there's got to be some underlying passion or reason behind it. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you, I don't think.
Just one more thing I'll add, because that got me thinking. Just like anything in life, the second something that was your hobby now becomes your job, it changes. When you're supporting now a team of people, it changes. And so you have to think about that, and I think your passions will change. So for me, you know, someone who loved aviation in the military, there's a lot more to it now to support this business. So I really enjoyed actually leaning into the business side of things and hopping on brand calls and hiring our team and thinking about that strategy. And that's really interesting to me now too. So just know if it's something you really like and enjoy, you might need to be okay with that it now becomes work, and that changes the mentality of things, and not everyone realizes that.
Audience questions? Yeah.
And so as like a past life being a consultant, it was easy to make content because consultancy is like you're just solving whatever problem they have, and if you're an expert in that, it gets easier. But running a company where maybe you're trying to sell a product, and that product doesn't just kind of mold to whatever use case the way a consultant would, how'd you go about building a brand and making content that helps promote a company's product without it seeming just promotional, but actually delivering value?
Yeah, so I get asked this question a lot, right? Brands are wanting to make content for products, for their services, and it's hard, and I don't have the perfect answer because that is a lot different than what we're doing. What initially made my channel so successful was that I was an individual that people could relate to and follow along with a personality, and you don't always have that with a brand. But if you can have that with a brand, I do think that's something to look at. Also, super cliche answer, but that's really how creators started taking off, is because brands realized that, and so they would hire out people like, me and you, Hoover, and other creators and influencers, if you use that word, to help tell the story for them. And I still think that's really powerful. And I'll just go back to what I said earlier. There are quite a few brands who have figured that out. And so for you to identify them and see what's working, that's the best way to do it. Because it's been done before, and it's being done a lot. It's just a lot harder, I'd say. The same strategies that I use don't one-for-one apply to brands trying to sell a product for the reasons that you mentioned.
Thank you.
So, I'm Zach Doherty. I'm a Marine Public Affairs Officer at SIOP, and then also now work in the reserves at the Entertainment Liaison Office. So I think some of my colleagues have worked with you.
Yeah, Robbie, we're talking to him right now. Yeah.
Just curious, I just found this really informational, and so thank you for sharing all your insights. As in your content, what stories and like tones are you seeing are resonating the most with your audiences? Because in the public affairs world, we get our PAG and we tell the same talking points about commitment and partnership and alliance, and it can feel very cookie cutter. Influencers have a little more leeway, or creators have a little more leeway to put their personality into it, but there's still a lot of restrictions on that. And especially I think with our service values around being humble and not self-promoting, how have you guys kind of navigated telling authentic stories, but in a way that's still engaging and competitive in the information environment?
For me, it goes back to, again, if I'm going to tell a story with that family member, the victim sitting in the room, right? So like everything's got to be focused on that human connection, and having empathy for them, while at the same time going through an honest debrief assessment of like what happened and the mistakes that were made. So I guess that's the kind of leeway I have with it. Is like when I show that empathy and I'm able to not point the blame specifically at that individual in terms of like judgmentally like towards them, I'm able to have the leeway to kind of break down the mistakes more in the video, and so I can say this was a reckless mistake. It wasn't necessarily a reckless individual, and that sort of thing. But there's definitely like a fine line there, and I've kind of had to explore that boundary a little bit at times. But that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I think there's a lot of creators who are getting it right and a lot who are getting it wrong. And I'm going to answer this talking through the military lens. is, right? Because I've seen the military continue to work with a bunch of different creators now. And it's interesting because I'm all for it. I do feel like our team is one of the early people doing this, has helped allow other creators to get access. And people ask me how I think about that, and I seriously am all for it because I think it motivates our team as well to continue innovating. And two, in some way, it actually makes it easier for us to get access because we can point to another channel that's done something similar. But what I'm starting to see happen is that the military sometimes will say, hey, it's worked for Sam and his team, therefore it might work for everyone. And then what happens is they'll bring a creator in to do a certain story, but that creator has no idea what the military is really about, what those values are about. And then it turns into a product that I think, and I've seen the feedback, actually makes the military kind of look like a joke. And so I think especially for you in the Marine Corps Entertainment Office and anyone on the military side choosing who you work with, you have to make sure the people you're working with are the right fit. Are they telling the story you want to be told? Are they holding the standards of the military? For us, for our team, it's not about me. I'm the host of the series, and I help translate the complex world of the military in a way that everyone can understand. Where what I see with a lot of other creators and influencers is they make the video all about themselves. It's look at me do this, hey, 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 look at me. And I think you're losing the real heart of what that access should be used to do, which is to tell the stories of the soldiers and sailors and active duty, reserve guard people that are currently serving. And that's such a huge focus. I'm a part of the video, but I'm not the video. So think about that and the creators you're working with, look at their past stuff, see if it really is a good fit, and please don't just look at follower counts, subscribers, views, and think that's like the end goal, because it's not.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question. Yeah, over there.
You got to talk about like just it's a little bit touching on it's more of like going from 100 then to 1,000 and kind of like that whole journey of building the viewership to grow your platform.
You talking about the follower count and the growth of that?
Yes.
Is that what the question
Follower
is?
count, subscribers, that kind of thing. Just want to feel that whole.
Here, let me ask you, because this is always something I thought about. Was there something you did to get over 1,000, to then hit 100,000, to then hit 500,000? Was there anything you changed? Because I'm curious.
So for me, like when I launched my aviation channel, I think most people don't realize I had that 2-year background of making content already, where like I learned the hard way how to get those followers and how to earn that trust and grow that audience. And so when I started Pilot Debrief, I mean, I was able to grow that very rapidly. And mainly, the main tool that I used to grow was short form content in the early days. And so that got me to my 100,000 followers within the first year. And now I'm closing in on 1 million at the 3.5 year point. So there hasn't been, other than that initial strategy for the short form to start to get that momentum going. I can't point to any one specific thing that like I've done other than just being consistent and being true to the audience and just trying to make each video better than the next and always maintaining that connection with the viewer.
Yeah, I'll just close out by saying, even with everything I've said about how many videos are being uploaded every single day, there's still never a better time to be a creator than right now, right? Right now is the best time to be a creator. And I think the barrier to entry to be a creator and to hit upload on your first video has never been lower. I mean, basically with short form now on an iPhone, you can put something out there and who knows how it's going to perform. Just know it's not always going to be an immediate hit, an immediate success. The most successful creators have spent a lot of time doing this and have innovated and have changed their styles and have figured out what works, and when they find out what works, they double down on it. So there's a lot of intricacies. So if you have what that takes and you're ready to go and you're comfortable putting yourself out there, there's never been a better time than right now.
All right, awesome. This concludes our panel. Let's please give a big round of applause for Nick and Sam. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to grab a picture with them and grab them while you can, while they're still here.